Hey folks, welcome to our State of DevOps Report panel discussion. Today we are going to try and unpack the State of DevOps report by Google Cloud and walk through what are the key changes we have noticed which have happened across the past year. Uh, so one of the main things, accomplishments and outcomes that were investigated on the current State of DevOps report was reducing burnout during their entire phase of collating all these questions and surveys, which helped them with this. The next one was flow, of how people managed to achieve their development tasks. The third main point was job satisfaction, in terms of, are people overall satisfied with their job and the work that they tend to do for their respective firms. What's the organizational performance and what are the key indicators in relation to that? How you verify your product performance and what has helped productivity and team productivity for all these different topics. And two of the main things that came out of it was platform engineering and AI, and how they have helped our different companies and users and dev teams to expedite their overall process, deliver faster, bigger, better, faster. Uh, and we, from there, will go to our first question in regards to it. And Courtney, I was wondering, in terms of all the transformation that you've noticed with AI adoption and the productivity gains that have tended to come along with it, have you noticed what are the different ways companies are approaching this and how they have ensured that they get the best productivity gains from AI?
Yeah, thank you so much for welcoming me today, Amit.
But prior to that, sorry, my bad. I just realized I have not introduced the entire panel. My bad. So let's begin with first with the introduction of Courtney. Courtney, you want to take it from there?
Sure. Happy to introduce myself. It's really great to be here. My name is Courtney Nickerson. I currently work as a developer advocate and solutions engineer for TestCube by GoopShop. TestCube is a cloud-native testing framework that helps you orchestrate your tests. It's test agnostic, and that's really part of the reason that I spent a lot of time reading things like the DORA Report. And outside of that, I help co-organize the CNCF Bilbao meetup, Kubernetes community days in Spain and Pakistan, and I mom. So that's me.
You want to go next, Farouk?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm with Odyssey Cloud, and we're basically into DevOps and cloud migration. That's what we specialize into. And so I have mainly experience into digital transformation, especially with the focus on fintech sectors. And I'm currently DevOps ambassador with PeopleCert, and that's about it. And I'm a dad of a 4-year-old, so I'm busy most of the time with him. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. And next goes to William. Apart from riding motorbikes, which I do remember us discussing at KubeCon, uh, tell us a bit more about yourself.
I'm William. I'm a consulting architect at Mirantis. Mirantis needs little introduction, but we are focused on telco, on enabling FinOps organizations, enabling edge organizations with their cloud native adoption journey. In particular, myself, I help customers um, hopefully implement a successful strategy for their cloud native transformation and adoption of platform engineering and edge computing environments. I'm also a CNCF ambassador like Courtney. I am based in Netherlands, where I sometimes help organize the CNCF meetup group when I find time. I'm also part of the working group platform, the CNCF working group platform, as well the CNCF new initiative for the Black, Indigenous, and people of color, the BIPOC group. And I am a shadow for the release 132 of Kubernetes, which hopefully we will make happen next week.
Exciting.
And I'm a
time.
dad of 2 beautiful kids.
Yeah. Exciting times. So the next we'll go to Mr. Vinayak. So tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure, Amit. First of all, thank you for having me over. I've around close to 14 to 15 years of experience in managing IT operations for different organizations. So currently, I'm working with Liberty General Insurance. I am based out in Pune, India. And I'm here to discuss how the DORA report is, talks about and how it is impacts the operation side of the
Yeah. And finally, we have Mr. Brad McCoy, who is also another CNCF ambassador. So that makes it 3 today in the panel discussion. Please go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, hi to Courtney and William. I haven't seen you for a while. So, William, thanks for being a great host in Amsterdam when we were in KubeCon. That was an amazing time. Hoping to see you soon. And Courtney, I've known Courtney for quite a while now through KubeCons as well. So, also looking forward to seeing you soon. I'm working as the head of platform engineering for Basic. So, been in DevOps for a while. Also had a lot to do with these reports through the CD Foundation as well. So organizing them through different companies as well. So excited to talk about it today.
That's awesome. And lastly, I am Amit D'Souza. So I started Odyssey Cloud to try and help companies make sense and demystify this whole cloud native space and all the different apps, whether it's the test cube from KubeShop or Cert Manager. And I was part of the Kubernetes release team 1.31. So I just missed you, William. And today we'll begin with discussing how unpacking the DORA report, and finally, after the introduction, which I initially missed, we'll go ahead with the first question, where we talk about how the current DORA report has AI adoption has helped productivity across different teams, whether be it at KubeShop or clients you are working with. Courtney?
Yeah, so it was great. We're kind of talking about this a little bit before we came on, just at the stage, but we are seeing a lot more people using AI. We're using it internally at KubeShop as we develop TestCube, as well as seeing a lot of our end users using AI. We're seeing most people are starting to leverage it after the big boom and craze and everybody using it for everything. We're seeing most people starting to use it to kind of optimize different types of processes. So they might be using it to find the bottlenecks in their CI/CD pipelines and optimize that process to get rid of some of the mundane tasks that are going on. We are seeing people using it. We use it internally as well for a certain amount of code. But we don't see it being the silver bullet for everyone, where all of a sudden it's accelerated massively everybody's productivity. What we do see is without a little bit of the human touch and people who are still reviewing things, nobody's really confiding 100% in their AI results, which I personally think is a very good thing. But we are seeing people use it in their everyday tasks. And then what's started to happen, at least in our teams and in our end users, is they all of a sudden have these daily mundane tasks that have been automated and they don't have to do them anymore, but all of a sudden they have extra time, and figuring out where to put that extra time to make the biggest impact on things is a challenge that I think a lot of people still haven't really gotten their hands around, in terms of where do we want to invest this time to make an impact as we move forward. And so I think we are seeing some of that in the DORA metric report this time, of how much AI is or isn't increasing productivity. Yes, it's increasing productivity on one end, and we're all living this automation of simple tasks. But then what do you do with your time after that? And companies kind of have to figure out where to invest that extra time to get the biggest bang for their time allotment.
Yeah. So, William, in terms of Courtney that mentioned that you get all this extra time, have you noticed in different companies how they are spending this extra time that they have received, and what solutions or what are they concentrating on?
Well, I do agree mostly with Courtney. What I see, I don't know about the extra time. I can say what I see in matters of adoptions and how that relates to the productivity or the wish of productivity or an increased productivity. I mostly see three patterns. From a customer perspective or a client perspective, I do see something that is very much in line with the DORA report, which is code optimization and code explanation. So they customers that want to optimize parts of their code and explain, and developers that want to get better explanation of obscure code. But a pattern that I particularly like is the use of AI to accelerate and smooth out the onboarding on a code base of a new developer. When a developer comes in, let's say the first 3-4 months are spent understanding the code base, if there is a very large code base, and use the practices of the organization for that code base. AI can definitely help there, can definitely help lint that code base that the developer is going to develop. And that's one pattern. The other pattern is from vendors. Vendors focusing on creating integrations between what's present at the client and what's being developed by the vendor itself. So they spend time creating that integration with those code bases, with those practices to smooth out the experience of adopting AI. And the last one is companies like Nscale. They are creating these AI-specific clouds to enable organizations to just get what they need from the AI, spin-off instances, and then eventually use them, however they intend to use them. I don't know how much I see that pattern matching the first one, but I definitely see an increase in adoption after the first big hype. Now they start adopting the AI to see productivity. Now, are they seeing that productivity? Yes, I think so. But I think we are still in the drop phase of that J curve of adoption, right? So we are not yet on the upscale. We're still on the drop phase. So yes, that's what I see.
Absolutely. The adoption generally for any new tools, and especially something as complex as AI, would definitely take quite a lot of time for people to get comfortable around. Which have you noticed something similar, Farooq, as far as the adoption or the complexity of adoption is concerned, and has that helped companies in terms of productivity?
Yeah, I think one thing that came across very clearly with regards to this in the DORA report also, and something which Courtney and William mentioned, is that there's a lot of AI adoption, right? And a lot of people are using it, which is where, if you use it right, you get bandwidth or you get burnt out. And then people are trying to use this and improve productivity at a individual level, right? But what needs to happen to take it like get the actual benefit, the business objective, right, is you need to have organizational goals that tie into this initiatives. So that's where you will see this AI being beneficial from a business objective. So you can see some developer writing code and then probably pushing out higher quality code, but at an org level, are you able to put that across the whole department and have an AI tool that can help linting, or it can help to do things like create smaller PRs and encourage those kind of behaviors, which then translate into a lot of good practices and good user experience, which is what the business actually wants. So I think that is where I think there is a gap between the AI productivity where it is happening at an individual level, but then it needs to happen with a guardrail and with an objective where the organization as a whole drives that initiative and aligns everybody.
Yeah. So so both you, Farooq, and William, you all mentioned linting for code bases, and that actually takes us to our next question, which directly ties up with rework. So one of the main reasons we require linting is so that we don't have to rework on our specific problems, or we have not potentially misspelt a variable name or something to that effect. That's where whether it's IDs or AI has helped us a lot. So in terms of that, what have you noticed, Brad, that teams are generally struggling with in terms of managing their rework and deployments? And how do you think that different teams can minimize this and reduce this? And is AI played a part in that journey?
Yeah, so I think linting is great. Like it's using tools like GitHub Copilot. There's many others available as well. They're really great. Some things that we found, like on a big organization scale, is that the juniors coming along, we actually did a study, and 1 year later they weren't any better than what they started because they use AI to do everything. So giving it the context of act as a tutor is really important, because it won't just do the code for you. It'll explain why it did the code like this, why it linted like that, why your code was wrong. So we found that was really important. So I think it really frees up a lot of people's time. Also, offshoring sometimes with other countries, you see that there's the developer, there's the QA, there's another different type of testing team, and going from development to QA, it's sort of like siloed. So the developers will throw their code over there, it's wrong, the QA team will go back as a bug, and it's in this like crazy cycle. So it's starting to break down those cycles a little bit, and it's sort of giving better code. So I think that in terms of if you do it properly and you use the right prompts, I think it can be really effective.
Yeah. Vinayak, have you noticed something similar in terms of your change failure rate and rework that is required? Have you noticed different companies and what really they implement to ensure this rework is not required and the change failure rate for your tasks have been reduced?
Yes, absolutely. So like I said, for more than a decade, I've been working in this managing the operations, right? So, of course, any code change in production has always been a nightmare. So, I mean, you're always at the edge, right? Whenever there's anything new going into the system. So, yeah, and rework has always been there. But then, of course, we have evolved. So, work with various organizations and different organizations based on the product company, whether there are a service company, right? It differs, right? So, and overall. But then, most important factors like which come up, right, which is like improving the uh, QA testing, like having testing automated so that it is faster and we don't have like human dependencies over there for human errors. Then again, continuous testing as well, right? So that is also very important because so much of development happening around, right? One of the factors which was very critical, which I saw like across different organizations, was having a strong and robust change process, change management process. That is very required, very much required, with having various any release, right, going through multiple checks and validations, etc., right? So that is one important thing which it helps in curbing down the post change error rates, right, in the production environment. uh, that has been one of my observations over the years. Apart from that, having the shift left approach, that also helps, right? So involve all the various functional teams as well as the QA, security, etc. Right uh, from the design phase, of the change. So that way, a lot of things can be taken care of as we move along the SDLC process right before even the development starts. So that is one thing which I've noticed that over a period of time, organizations have started accepting this or implementing this approach overall.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then of course there
That
is
sorry.
monitoring major. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so one important factor is that the continuous improvement. So that's where the monitoring and measuring comes into picture, right? The retrospective also is very important, right, after the change, right, and how we ensure that similar misses are not, uh, we don't come across similar misses in the future, right? So that is a very important factor as well. A lot of organizations, they at times, once the issue has been resolved, or you overcome the blocker or something, you tend to miss on that. But that is actually a difficult part. A lot of organizations, they try to do it, but somewhere it becomes very tricky to keep this continuous.
Yeah. Sorry. So William, what's your thoughts about all of this?
Um, on top of what Binayak said, there is one thing that we need to uh, there is one thing that we need to focus with. Failure rate and change. Failure rate and rework are two metrics that are used to evaluate stability. The higher the rework, the the most the least stable is the output, right? This is the perception. Um, so, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but one thing that one other metric that we are evaluating our initiative, that is platform AI or whatever output is in place, is the throughput. So we can't have a high throughput and a high degree of stability, right? Uh, you can have it good, fast, or cheap. Choose two. You can't have it all three. The good old thing. The event having a strong and a very strong change um, advisory board, like the classic cab, can slow down the throughput or can reduce the throughput, but definitely can bring up the stability,
Yeah.
because we are looking into change with more eyes. So the organization needs to evaluate, needs to put in place whatever organization means, right? Organization as a company, organization as a team, organization as a business unit. So the organization has to put in place um, a strategy and share that strategy and share that vision, so that that throughput and that stability have uh, are as important, but they are not negative ever. So meaning that if stability is low, doesn't mean that the team is doing a bad job. If throughput is low, doesn't mean that the team is doing a bad job. So this is a very important aspect of using failure rate and rework as metrics to evaluate our product or platform engineering effort.
Yeah. Uh, so you did mention about the change failure rate and your throughput, which tends to happen. Do you think if we talk about platform engineering, you kind of create a repeatable formula to keep your throughput high for modules which are going to be reused, in terms of whether it is pub sub, or because developers constantly are not just writing code, they're designing solutions. So do you think that platform engineering has helped in improving this productivity, and trying to ensure that at the same time you're not making the same mistakes by creating repeatable formulas?
So that's a tricky question. If I have to go by the DORA report, so I'm a platform engineering guy. So for me, that's yes, yes, yes to the answer to the question. But if I have to go through the DORA report, we are seeing a drop in productivity using platform engineering practices. Now we have to look. What I said before is a drop doesn't necessarily mean a negative. Platforms are put in place to remove all those tasks that the developer should not be worrying about. The platform itself, the security, the auditing, all these things the platform should deliver, right? The platform should deliver these modules, these golden paths that allows the developer to reduce their cognitive load, all these beautiful words that we know and we love by now. Why do we see that productivity drop, or that throughput drop? Personally, I believe is because we are still in that. When we come to AI, we are in the drop curve of the J curve. When we come to platform engineering, we are in the rising part of the J curve. So we are adopting it. We are understanding it. Are we doing good with tests? No. We are. What I see is that we are not implementing tests in the best way possible at platforms, or at least I see clients not approaching the tests in the right way. Which that's where that KubeShop comes in, right? They have seen this. They are approaching this problem systematically. Why are we not seeing tests? Because it's difficult. Putting in place a framework within a platform that allows for simplifying the test, it's a hard job to do. It's difficult. So we are still doing that. We are still using automated testing frameworks, but they might not be fully implemented within the platform. So our throughput is it's reduced because our developers are still doing that platform test, that code testing part. If the developers can shift that testing to the platform engineers, can give that to the platform leads, platform engineers, then the developers can just take care of writing the test. But the test is provided as a capability of the platform to the code that is being developed.
So Courtney, so William just mentioned that KubeShop is actually helping a lot in ensuring this testing actually happens. Could you describe how you all have helped clients in ensuring, while building this platform, to try and ensure that their system doesn't start failing, and ensures that you keep this beautiful balance between stability and continue to test your application and platform before you release it out to the developers?
Yeah, absolutely. What William is saying is spot on in terms of all of the pains that we're constantly hearing people struggle with. So we've been developing for, I think, 3.5 years now, and I think Brad's actually used TestCube a little bit. A tool called TestCube, and what it is it's a test agnostic framework and tool that helps you orchestrate and execute your tests. Because what has happened over a period of time is everybody has their testing incorporated into their CI/CD tooling and their CI/CD pipeline, but CI/CD tools really haven't been built for testing. They make zero sense to your QA team for the most part. Also, there's a massive knowledge gap between what your ops team is doing, what your dev team is doing, and anybody who's in the middle trying to run tests, we've now moved into this cloud native world where everything has scaled out. So as much as you've scaled out a lot of really great things, you've also scaled out all of those same problems with having tooling that hasn't been created for testing, and a bigger and bigger gap in terms of knowledge of the people who are running these things. And now there's even more to test. So it's not that you're just testing your application. You also have people who want to test infrastructure, who want to test performance, who want to test a bunch of different things, and those all have to find some way to orchestrate and coordinate with each other. And it's a really heavy lift to have to do piece by piece. And so what we've been working on for the last few years, and specifically to try to help people with their change failure rates and rework concept, is having a single pane of glass where you can run any kind of test in one place and run different test suites. Because it's test agnostic, you might have one team that's running playwright tests or basic end-to-end tests and unit tests, but you've got a whole team dedicated to running load testing and a whole another team that wants to test infrastructure. And maybe what would ideally happen is you have a suite that has a bunch of different testing frameworks in it that get triggered at different times. And as we've moved into a cloud native space as well, we're seeing that sometimes tests don't need to be triggered on a daily basis. They need to be triggered when something changes in your production. So something changes in your pod or something changes in your Kubernetes instance, and you'd actually like to trigger a test when that happens to make sure that nothing's broken and that your application is still running. Well, now there are ways to do that before you couldn't do it. But it's specifically because CI/CD tools are not built to be testing. They're built to help you integrate. They're built to help you deploy. They're not built to help you test. Testing is part of that. It's an integral part. You can only ship as fast as you can test. You can only be as good as you are capable of testing in terms of figuring out where your problems are, but also coming up with a way where different people from different teams can be able to organize and orchestrate all of those different tests is quite a heavy lift and a complex task. We still are working on this and struggling with it. It's been 3 years. We've got a lot of people who are using the tool. We've got a very active community that gives back to us and gives a lot of information and resources about what they've got going on in their pipeline. But exactly what William was describing in terms of platform teams having to all of a sudden service all of these different people with all of their different tests. A lot of people don't like testing as well, totally understandable. Everybody has to do it, but nobody really does it enough. And we all know this, and there's so many reasons as to why, and it's not just because you don't like it, it's because it's complicated. And a lot of times people want to be doing a really good job, but if you don't have the tools in place to be able to do that, you skip to what you can do well. So we've been spending a lot of time working on this. We do have clients that we're seeing have drastic changes in their own reports and metrics about their change failure rates, and being able to work more efficiently, effectively once they get testing kind of under wraps. But testing is it is a topic in the cloud native space that doesn't get a lot of attention. Everybody has to do it. Everybody kind of pushes it under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's because it's kind of ugly. It's not the shiny new kid on the block. It's this old, nagging lady that's kind of like, oh, yeah, I'm still here and I'm still bothering you. And as we all know, we all have a nagging lady somewhere in our lives. I might be that for some people in my life. We don't go away. So it is something that we need to start putting more attention on.
Yeah, Courtney, maybe it's time to start testing con like ArgoCon and all the other side single days that you have.
Right? On top of all the other events. No, that's actually a really good idea, testing con. If anyone wants to help, let me know.
Absolutely. So I have actually been using TestCube quite a lot for all my clients, whether it's K6 testing or it is, as you mentioned, all the different test suites where you can integrate into one single system. It is massively helpful to have that single pane of glass, because prior to that, when we used to do our testing in GitLab, we had to go into individual pipelines to verify whether what happened, which all tests ran in this particular thing, and what's the current status of it, etc. But mentioning about testing and platform engineering, Brad, have you found that you all tend to do a lot of testing while you all have implemented platform engineering into your setup? And have you all ensured that all the platforms or new features for your platform prior to release get tested? And how do you all generally manage that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess going back maybe 4 years when we first started this, before platform engineering was a thing, I guess we had, you and I, when we were doing prod, you almost have like a DevOps dev staging UAT prod as well. So I guess you have to have an extra environment just to test the platform itself. So we anything new we test in dev, and I guess GitOps and platform engineering have enabled us to replicate that same environment as well. So traditionally you wouldn't be able to do that, or it would take months and months. I remember when we worked back at Avoca, implementing small DevOps things would take like 4 months, whereas now you spin up a Helm chart and you're done it in like 30 minutes. So I think having good practices and definitely leveraging GitOps will really help you to make sure you have the same environment throughout, and you don't affect the application code as well. So it's answered the question. Maybe you can answer your own question there and talk a little bit about it as
well. Absolutely. Like I totally agree about having that DevOps has to have its own dev environment. It's a bit funny, but you got to test all your DevOps tooling prior to actually releasing it to any of the developers. They are your clients, and you would have to go through that phase. But definitely tools such as TestCube have helped me massively in terms of ensuring, hey, if there is a failure, go and perform this particular test via this particular webhook, etc. Finally, it all comes together, whether it's platform engineering and GitOps and testing, they all come together into one beautiful piece so that you can integrate all of them together to ensure you can perform what you're trying to achieve. But that takes me to the next point, where you need, while after you do all of this, finally, we are doing it for ensuring that your developers are independent of the DevOps team, because they don't have to keep creating you these pesky tickets saying that, hey, I need a new environment. Hey, I need a new database. So how do you, Farooq, feel that we ensure that we are empowering the dev teams, and we ensure that we can give them this independence from depending on DevOps or platform teams?
Yeah, I think that's always the end objective, and that's the most difficult thing to actually achieve. But I think a big part of this happens is because the developer only has one objective in mind. He just wants to push out the code, right? And that's the only single thought that a developer has in his mind. He wants to push out code as much as he can, as fast as he can, right? However, all the other stuff that, if you're doing testing, if you're doing platform engineering, and all of these stuff is actually supposed to align with this objective, right? So how do you align this is where, so for example, with platform engineering, you give them a lot of self-service tools, right? Where they can just go in and they can do their own stuff with minimal intervention from the platform teams. So I think, and then as a platform team or as a DevOps team, we have to have those guys. Like for example, there's a report which says that 71% of the PRs that take more than 5 minutes to review aren't touched for X number of days, and the others are touched within 24 hours, right? So that by in itself is a huge thing. So the minute where the developer sees a correlation with what you're trying to actually achieve with these tools is where the developer will actually start engaging. And these are not these are very simple things. For example, having a roadmap where they get to say something, they get their inputs, or having their OKRs aligned with what the platform team is doing. So that's where you kind of bring them to the same table, and then they are able to tell the pain points that they are doing so that they can push out the code faster. And then when they see that correlation happening, I think that's where, we can empower the developers to actually start using the platform in the way that it is supposed to be used for them to speed up things, right? That's the whole objective. So generally it's like just separate silos, and then we try to just push them together on the final day and make them work, rather than just growing together. I think that's yeah. And also I think with this there will always be a feedback loop that needs to happen, and with that you need to have blameless RCAs, right? It shouldn't be that it's me versus you or something, but it's like, okay, this is what went wrong, how do we fix this, and we put this into a loop. And I think that's how we can generally empower the developers.
Yeah. So have you noticed something similar, William, where you find that even though the platform team and the developers actually should be working together, they kind of get siloed off into two separate teams where each of them have their own independent goals rather than one single goal. And how do you think generally platform teams and devs should combine and work on this?
Here I'm going to receive a lot of attention, I suppose. I believe silos are good. I know they so, and this goes back to the platform efforts. The developing what Farouk said is true. Developer roadmap publish make the developers a part of it, a platform roadmap, and make the developer part of it. Let them fit into that roadmap and put their requirements in the roadmap. That's the idea of platforms. Developing a platform as a product. Now, if you don't guardrail and silos that initiative, you are going to have an immense amount of feedback, which is good, but is a zoo of feedback. So, and I love zoos, but I mean, I don't love zoos, but you know what I mean. So working in silos, what I've seen working in silos, I have an example of a very, very well-known German automotive company. I'm not saying the name, but they have it as a modus operandi to work in silos. The benefit that they have seen, and that I have seen also some customers that tried that is that you are not you're not refusing to cooperate with the other team, but you're establishing a way of communicating with the other team. You're establishing an API contract with the other team on how to communicate back and forth feedback. So you promote the feedback loop, but you channel it into ways of interfacing with the other team. So what happens when you do that is that, imagine yourself sitting in a room. So the concept of silos is getting a team closed in a closed space. If we have to visualize it in a closed space with no rooms, no windows, they can't interface with anybody else. They open the door when they have to ship something, and then they close it. That's the distorted concept of silos that we have in our head. What I see as a silos is a glass room with windows that open all over the place and doors that open all over the place. Everything is closed, but you're working. And when you need that feedback, you open everything. You open all the doors and all the and you expect feedback from everywhere. And then you close it again, and then you move forward, and you implement these functional needs that those feedback entail to. So that's how I see silos being effectively used. Now, again, I will not get a lot of positive feedback from loving silos, but I think they work, and they work very well.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from. It's the same way how we have sprints and we ensure that we don't go and add more tickets in the middle of a sprint where you need this time to actually concentrate on building out your platform. and just build this feature and then go back to the developers for feedback about, hey, what do you think about this new feature? Do you think I should tweak something? So while you do say it's good to be siloed, I understand what you're trying to explain in the background of it being more of deliver the feature and then come back to the devs for feedback. So
Absolutely.
definitely.
This one additional thing that silos, and I think the Brad wants. I look at the Brad eyes, and I think he has something to say about it. One of the things that silos help with as well is flow from one side of the developers and from the other side of platform engineers. So you're calling out features, and I understand where you're going. I call them capabilities. For me, a feature is of a defined, specific capability. So features are within capabilities, but nevertheless, we're talking about the same thing. When we want to develop capabilities of the platform, we need to close those doors. We need to understand what we're doing. We need to begin that flow. When we are done, we need to interrupt that flow to allow feedback to come in. So we need to go into the flow of those developers and say, hey, come in, help me out. As Farouk says, tell me if I'm doing the right thing. So
Yeah. Brad, what about you? Like, have you noticed that when you do ensure that you're building out your features or capabilities for your platform, what is the best way you've found to ensure that the platform team continues to have this flow so that you all can actually build out the platform and achieve what you're trying to, which direction you're trying to go in?
Yeah, I think first I just want to say what you're saying there, William, was really great. It's good to hear people say that silos are good, because a lot of people, would like read a DevOps book and they say silos are bad and they don't understand it. So coming from that different perspective was really interesting. You should write a book. I would read it.
maybe we should both write it.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Also, what you said before about throughput, I know this is a little bit going off the subject, but it would also be interesting to see, okay, so people have just started adopting platform engineering, right? So obviously it takes a long time to set it up, like could take 1 or 2 years. So it would be interesting to see the metrics on, okay, you start the platform as a product and you're sort of getting the platform engineering. 3 years after, how does your throughput look then? So it would be interesting to see the context of where people are at the maturity of that, to see how that DORA metrics changes in too, because obviously this report was quite bringing in platform engineering, AI, they're very new things, in terms of DORA. So getting more context around that would be interesting. But so back to the original question, Amit, you were saying, just ask me one more time.
I was trying to see, how do you all ensure that your platform team achieves and maintains its flow?
Yeah, flow. Okay. So it's a hard one, yeah, because generally platform teams are quite small. Platform engineers cost a lot of money. So I think leveraging open source and not trying to reinvent the wheel is really important. So going to KubeCon, like getting involved in the community is good, because you can leverage other people's stuff. So keeping the flow going, trying to really open it up to developers, not blocking them, but enabling them, getting those guardrails and letting them do the work too. So I'm a big believer of like giving a lot of the work to them, because developers are generally cheaper than platform engineers anyway. So as a business, a lot of the cost is not measured into these metrics too. So we talk about all these other metrics, but we never talk about cost, which is probably the main thing. And as you know, a lot of clients at the moment are trying to have cost reduction. So yeah, in terms of flow, I think just treating it like a product as well, and then getting feedback from developers. What do you actually need? What does the business need? What are our goals? And just aligning on that, instead of just trying to make stuff up and think this is what we need.
Yeah. So definitely, it's a continuous improvement process where we are working on trying to improve this setup that we have and measure what is actually helping us achieve these performance gains, etc. So how do you feel, Courtney, that CubeShop or the clients you'll work with ensure that you all have this continuous improvement phase, and how do you all read these metrics or obtain these metrics?
Yeah, great question. I think Brad really opened it up there when he was talking. I mean, he very briefly mentioned, but about giving a lot of that work back to developers, and in doing so, what we see is a lot of people leveraging I'm personally a big proponent of policies and guardrails for developers. I think as soon as you employ those, what you actually do is give them free range to then take on a lot of the other things that are going on, because they don't have to be thinking about how to do it, they're thinking about what to do. And so I think that's the first thing that I am now seeing more people starting to adopt more. Before, I was very involved in a project that was policy based. We didn't see a lot of people using them. I think a certain amount of that was just the maturity of market and people using Kubernetes. We're now at a different stage where people are getting things deployed, and they now have these other problems, right? Of how to keep things, how to have continuous improvement and what to measure. So I think that's the first one we see more and more people use. William can probably speak to that a lot more as well as Vignac, different ways to employ policies and guardrails to give people power back. I think there are a lot of other things that people are using as well. We're seeing a lot of observability tools. OTel is definitely a space where it's continuing to grow. Companies like Honeycomb, they give real-time insights into performance and what's going on. And the more people can see what is actually happening in real time, the easier it is to then make more well-informed decisions about things, because you're measuring what the actual impact of things are at the moment, and then being able to decide what to do with them later on. So those are things that we're using, as well as seeing other people use. And then I think, since we've had such a focus on the platform engineering space, there are a lot of platform tooling companies out there that are in this mad dash race to come up with ways to help people continue to have continuous improvement and know what to measure. And we see certain things like Syntasio-Cradix frameworks that are working on promises. And Farouk very much spoke to this earlier about having environments where people aren't at fault. I really like their approach to things. It's, you make a promise, it's something across the board, everybody's constantly working to, it's a goal that's been set. It kind of level sets for people, and if you don't make it, it's a no fault situation. It's the team needs to look at why haven't they met that goal or promise yet. So I think everybody here has kind of touched on some of those things, and can probably expand quite a bit more.
Absolutely. So basically, as far as ensuring that you have this feedback loop and this feedback process for constantly improving, do you think in the long run we are going to start leveraging AI in order to kind of work on some of these bits, which would potentially improve how we are providing this output to our respective systems, or potentially even the platform systems start integrating AI within themselves in order to have this simplified as far as compliance is concerned, or setting up a new new capability is concerned? What do you think, William?
I think that what we need to establish that improvement is I'm sorry, I was distracted. We were talking about continuous improvement, and right?
Yeah. We mentioned about
Yes.
continuous improvement, and whether we could potentially leverage AI to work on this continuous improvement.
I think indirectly. So when we talk about continuous improvement, regardless of the subject, to improve whatever we want to improve, we need to have a desired outcome and measure it constantly, right? So we say what we want, we have a target, we see if we reach that target, once we reach that target, how do we improve on it? How do we build up on it? We want to use AI for it. Okay, we have to be a little bit specific. In what parts of the strategy and the tactical actions that we want to take in the journey of improvement, we want to use AI. We can't use it everywhere, right? We are going to be needing specific actions, tactical actions to improve that pipeline that will bring to the outcome that we improved. So measure, 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 measure 3 times, cut once. The carpenter says. So, and we have to have an organization-wide commitment to that improvement, and an understanding that to improve something, you first need to break it, or sometime you are going to break it. And breaking things, it's okay when you're trying to improve them. So yes, we can use AI. Depends how, depends where. Small batches.
Like Salt Bay does.
Exactly. Cook it. Oh, I need to add a little bit of salt and add a little bit of it. Just don't just drop it.
Absolutely. And I think lastly and finally, the one topic I want to touch on is what is the sustainability perspective of us jumping on this AI bandwagon? And the uh, the second part is platform engineering. Like all of this is coming together and it's fantastic. It's improving developer productivity. But in the long run, how sustainable is this to us and the entire landscape, as well as environment wise? How sustainable do you feel this whole thing is, Farooq?
Yeah, I think in terms of sustainability, I think you're right that it uses a lot of resources and it's very intensive. But so then you have this the way you use AI and the guardrails, and you don't really have to. So are you using it in the right way, right? So you don't really need to use a model that is really a monster for something as simple as linting your code. So I think that's where the resource utilization and that factor comes in, which is something I think is not something a lot of people are thinking about. But I think it was you who mentioned that every time you fire a query, a lot of water is being burned and consumed. So I think that's something I'm probably going to read up on and educate myself more. But I think that is so. I think AI usage of AI ethically, and then the sustainability part is something uh, we should think about.
Yeah. So, Brad, like while we're talking about sustainability and the ecosystem, right? So, how do you feel that companies are going to continue to ensure that we use AI sustainably, but at the same time potentially keep the costs down so that we could actually get tangible benefits of this, right? Because even not just from the environment perspective or societally, it's going to affect us, but the cost for AI can only be kept down for so long before it shoots up if it's not sustainable. So, how do you think companies can ensure that?
Yeah, I think going back to what William said about the strategy and the goals of the business and tying it back to that as well. So seeing what you need it for, do you need it? Sustainability is a funny one because a lot of companies will plant a tree now and then they say that that offsets the AI. So that's it's a hard question, but I think like the reality is that no one really knows. They haven't thought about that yet. So we're still working on that. I think using it as a managed service in the cloud, probably they will take care of a lot of that stuff as well. Sort of like the shared responsibility model in a way. I know that's more for like access identity management, but probably leveraging the managed service of it and letting them sort of take care of that and just consuming it, opposed to, I mean, there's different. I've seen some interesting talks around hosting like LLMs and Kubernetes as well. So sharing knowledge on that, and it'll be interesting to see a lot more talks around that and seeing how people can implement it themselves. But it's a hard question to answer.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's more for a discussion where, I just want to see how everyone in the room is thinking from different parts of the world, and what are we thinking about that perspective. What about you, Farooq? Like, how do you think this is going to affect us in the long run?
Yeah, I think in terms of sustainability in terms of the ecosystem, I think it's very hard to tell how we are going to solve that challenge. But in terms of productivity and in terms of cost, you already see, I don't think that's a very big challenge, because you see a lot of models getting cheaper every day, right? So you keep getting newer models, and the older ones are very cheap. So they have cents on the dollar, right? So they're actually cents when you just start using them. So they're a lot cheap. And then what Brad added makes sense, where you're going to get into that shared model stuff. However, in addition to that, you can also use your own models, host your own models on your systems, which will take a fraction of the resources. And of course, you have newer models like Llama and Llama 3. I think they are equally as good as the commercial, or the ones that you pay for. So in not all of the things, but of course you can train them and you can host them using tools, and then you can use them in your own system. So I think that is where you can look at the cost. But I think the cost is not a very big challenge, unless you are doing something very huge, and then yes, it becomes a challenge. But the next part for AI would be like how much reasoning it can do, and like you can automate stuff with it. Yes. And I think the other part is the influence, how much influence AI can do in your work. But the other part is the reasoning, which is where you keep getting these bigger models. But you really have open source models now which are very good at specific things.
Yeah. That is fantastic. I really loved having this panel here, and picking everyone's brains about all the different aspects of, be it platform engineering, or seeing how AI can help us improve our productivity, or how do we ensure that we use testing, such as test cube, to make sure that we are actually using all this in a feedback loop to help us build our systems and ensure platforms are on the right path. So thanks a lot once again, everyone. It was lovely having you all, and I hope we meet at the next KubeCon. Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.